In terms of the future, do you agree with me that there is likely to be an attempt to change the law to reflect what the Scottish Government were trying to do initially?
I don't actually agree with you, Iain. I think the immediate effect of this is going to be that John Swinney in the Scottish Parliament and Keir Starmer in the British Parliament and the First Minister in the Senedd in Wales are going to have to acknowledge this decision and respect it and address the fact that across the public sector, policies have been introduced that do not respect the right of women to have single-sex spaces. And those policies are going to have to be changed to comply with the law.
But why is that such a big issue, given that there don't seem to be very many incidents that are concerning? I was saying to a colleague...
There are constant incidents.
Well, how many?
Every week you will read about a tribunal where a woman is taking her employer to court because she has been discriminated against, because she has said, for example, in the Sandy Peggy case in Scotland, that she doesn't want to share women's changing facilities with a male. These cases are regular, and not everyone has the wherewithal or the ability to take a case to tribunals.
How many cases are there of biological men, transgender women, who have not had any surgery at all, attacking woman in a changing room?
Attacking. We're not talking about attacks. I mean,
well, I am.
I'm not. I'm talking about women's rights to privacy and dignity. Women have the right to have spaces where they can go to the toilet, deal with their period, change their clothing without men being present. That was accepted by everyone until very recently. So it's not a question of attacks, although sometimes attacks do happen, but it's a question of dignity and safety. That's what the Sandy Peggy case is about. If you come to lesbians, we don't have any lesbian bars any longer. We don't have any lesbian cafes, any lesbian bookshops. I'm a bit old for dating apps, but my younger friends tell me that the dating apps are full of men who say that they are lesbians.
You're never too old, Joanna.
Well, yeah, but you know, I mean, young lesbians who want to date other young lesbians go onto the dating apps and it's full of men who say they're lesbians and don't even look like women, most of them. So these are really real issues for women, and it doesn't have to be actual violence for it to be an issue for women. So my point is that, for example, the Scottish Government in its own internal policies says that people can self-identify into whichever bathroom or changing room they want to use. That is not the law. The Supreme Court have made that clear it's not the law. And so these sort of policies are going to have to be changed. So I think the immediate reality is that the Scottish and British and Welsh governments are going to have to look at policy across the public sector and change it to bring it into line with the law. And the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who are the regulator, are going to have to revise their guidance and take steps to make sure that the law is complied with.
A female colleague of mine said to me this afternoon, I'm much more concerned about walking down the street on my own and being attacked by a man than I am if I'm in a changing room.
But it's not about attacks. It's about the right to privacy and dignity. Women have got the right to change where only other women are present. We all accepted that until recently. So it's not about attacks.
All right.
Attacks do happen. There are cases of men going into women's spaces and attacking women. They do occur, and they've been reported in the newspapers. But that is not primarily what we're talking about. We're talking about women's rights to safety,
Freda,
to privacy and dignity.
Let's put that point to you about privacy and dignity. Do you accept that there is a concern there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you're in public, your first priority should be other people's privacy and dignity. I think if you can't be in public and not respect those things, you probably shouldn't be in public at all. If you're out in public and you're pointing at strangers because you think they might be trans, then you've got a problem, and people do that. So, and also this thing about dating apps and social spaces like lesbian clubs. I'm from a very small town. I didn't have the luxury when I was younger of having a gay men's club or a lesbian club or a trans club. There wasn't a population for it, but we recognised as young people that the people attacked us for very similar reasons. So the reason the LGBTQ existed wasn't because we invented it, it was because there was nowhere else for us to go. When we saw that pride flag on a building, it meant you will be safe here. You won't get beaten up by football fans. If you see a pride flag on a train, it may seem tokenistic, but it's like saying to somebody, we have your back if something goes wrong. Because for the longest time, I had to know when match days were in my town, so I didn't have to get on public transport during those times. So this sort of luxury vexation about, oh, we can't have lesbian spaces. You can have lesbian spaces, but the thing is with those, I mean, I think there is a problem with and I think it's to do with the nighttime economy more than anything, but spaces and clubbing is sort of less than it used to be. So when I go out now, everything's sort of, nobody has a gay club anymore. Most people just, in Manchester, you go in the Northern Quarter, everybody, they don't care if you're gay, lesbian and bisexual or whatever. Everybody just seems to meet and have a dance. But my point really is that these paranoias, that it seems like you've reversed engineered an argument where trans women are the threat. But what that does, not only does it ignore the reality that women are telling you what the real threats are, it's like saying if you say trans women are a threat, you're also saying all men are a threat. And that almost says, it's like, well, if all men are a threat...
That is the way society's going, isn't it?
Yeah, hang on a minute. Men are a threat to women.
Joanna,
the vast majority of violence that's perpetrated against women is perpetrated by men.
Let Freda finish her point.
OK, but that's a very important point.
If we say that men are innately violent, or that it's a natural... That. No, I know you didn't, but people do in this argument, because they'll say that it's a problem of men. It's almost... We need to educate boys out of misogyny, and we need to listen to what women are saying about their experiences in the world. And what the gender-critical argument does is it talks over women. I don't want to be talking about trans issues all the time. I want to be talking about misogyny, because that is the force that affects me and women.
I think we've actually found 2 points of agreement there, because I think you were nodding at what Freda said about misogyny, Joanna, and also she agreed with you about privacy.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, go on.
Well, Julie Bindel was on Piers Morgan the other night, and she came face to face with proper MAGA misogyny. And normally I would not support Julie Bindel, but when I heard what that man said to her, I would fully support Julie Bindel. He was calling her the most misogynistic.
Well, that's another point of agreement, because I would fully support Julie Bindel as well. So
we agree that the problem is misogyny. The problem is misogyny.
Of course, I agree that the problem is misogyny. Misogyny is directed against...
But it's not coming from trans women, Joanna.
Misogyny is directed against women from men, and trans women are men.
Yeah, but you've just...
Trans women are men. Trans women are men who wish to identify as women, and you'll notice that I always use the pronouns that people wish to be used, so I've called you she, but I don't believe you're a woman, Freda. I believe you're a man who wishes to identify as a woman, and out of courtesy I will call you she. But the point about misogyny is directed against women by men. Facts and statistics show that the vast majority of violence against women come from men. Women are worried about having men in the spaces where they go to the toilet or to change their clothing because they are concerned about their dignity and their privacy, and they also know that a man is far more likely to attack them than a woman. That's not prejudice. That is statistical fact.
Yes.
And if you want to talk about misogyny, let's talk about patriarchy. Patriarchy is a construct that affects all of us, but it affects women most. And that's why women are entitled to have sex-based protections. And what the Supreme Court has done today is to clarify that the protected characteristic of sex under the Equality Act refers to man, woman, based on biological sex. That doesn't take away trans rights, because trans people are protected under the protected characteristic of gender reassignment. And I actually think it's grossly irresponsible to whip up a moral panic saying that today's judgment rolls back trans rights when the Supreme Court have gone out of their way to explain why that is not the case.
Just before we go to the news, Gareth says, which is a point I haven't actually thought about, but Joanna, you'll both have a view on this. Joanna's point about private spaces. What if women don't want to get changed in the same place as lesbian women? Because
this is an old shibboleth.
Because you can also say sort of for gay men as well.
There's no evidence that lesbian women commonly attack other women. There's plenty of evidence that men commonly attack women. That is the sad reality of our society.
And I would say also that gay men are more likely to attack straight men than lesbian women are likely to, I use this word attack advisedly, but
women's behaviour is different from men's. And this idea that lesbians ape male behaviour is extremely lesbophobic. And there's a point I really want to make, because it's a really important point. You know, lesbians have suffered structural discrimination in our society for many years. When I came out in the 80s, you could lose your job for being a lesbian. Lesbians lost their rights to parent their children when they got divorced from their husbands. Lesbians have faced prejudice and discrimination arising from both our sexual orientation and our sex. And lesbians didn't acquire any protections against discrimination until 2003, which was a long time after people with the protected characteristic of gender reassignment receive that protection. So this idea that the only marginalised group in this debate is trans people is not right. Lesbians are a very marginalised group in our society. When I grew up and when I came out, I had lesbian bars to go to, lesbian associations. When the Scottish Government's KC was questioned in the Supreme Court about the implication of her argument, she said, yes, the implication of my argument is that there can be male lesbians and that lesbians don't have the right to associate together without men present.
How can you have a male lesbian?
Well, exactly. Lesbians are women who are attracted to other women. Lesbians do not have penises. Lesbians are not attracted to a certificate. They're attracted to women. And that's why I'm really glad that lesbians had input into this decision and the Supreme Court have respected our concerns.
Freda, before we go to the news, do you want to just comment on what Joanna's been saying there?
Yeah. I've got a friend who's a lesbian. She's very butch. She's got shaved head and she's very tall. And when she's with me, sometimes people give us homophobic slurs because they think we're a lesbian couple. Now, I know I'm not a lesbian, but it's about the way people discriminate, and that is misogyny. And these are things that are not the fault of trans women. And, I mean, Joanna talks a lot about lesbians, but the lesbians don't support this bill. Like, there is no lesbian project. It's a construct around the LGB Alliance.
That's incorrect. The LGB Alliance is a group that gets all its funding from ordinary lesbian, gay and bisexual people. Well, the Lesbian Project was set up by Julie Bindel and Kathleen Stock, who are out and proud lesbians.
What do they have in common?
They're lesbians.
No,
Have you got a problem with that?
Which lobby group do they belong to?
You tell me.
LGB Alliance.
LGB Alliance is a charity, Freda. It has every right to lobby on behalf of gay rights. Gay rights are protected.
Right. The Charity Commission could look into any charity. What, are you saying that because a charity sits above a reproach?
The mermaids tried to... Hang on, Freda, hang
Joanna.
on. No, you're talking nonsense. Mermaids attempted to have LGB Alliance removed from the charitable register, and they failed.
Why did they do that?
Because they didn't like the fact that we were speaking up for gay rights.